everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Dear Sam Live. We're going to do something a little bit different today, so thanks for tuning in. I've had a lot of questions come in, just kind of random funny questions that have been amusing throughout the week. Even some clients that have seen the Dear Sam Live channel and have prompted me with questions that are just really interesting. So this week, instead of talking about your personal branding and career development questions, which keep sending those in, you're welcome to keep emailing those at dearsam@ladybug-design.com. But this week we're going to share a little bit more about the company and how it came to be. And then you'll see I have this little fishbowl in front of me. It's not really a fishbowl, it's a flower vase. But we've kind of cut some questions that we've received this week and pop them in there, and I'll pull some out and answer them. The ones we don't get to, we'll be sure to answer the upcoming week on Facebook because they're fun questions. So one quick side note for anyone watching live or anyone listening to this later on our YouTube channel or on our podcast, next week's Dear Sam, the week of Thanksgiving, we're actually going to be doing it on Wednesday because I'm sure you don't want to spend your Thanksgivings with me. So next week, not the same time, same place but different time. So next week we're on Wednesday at 12:15, okay? We hope you get to enjoy a fantastic Thanksgiving with your friends and loved ones, and we'll see you Wednesday. So to get started, I've been asked many times how I started my business, and when clients ask during their consultations, I always ask them, do you have time for this story? Because it's kind of a long story, and they do, and they love listening to it, and they tell me afterwards that they just really enjoyed hearing about the journey, so I thought I'd share it with you. Especially on the precipice of the launch of our new website, which will be coming up very soon. I don't know the exact date, but very, very soon. And you're going to learn a little bit more about our story on that website, our mission. So I thought this would be good to kind of share that with the masses. So the company, as you know right now, is called Ladybug Design. As you may have seen, we will be changing the name coming up. Everything stays the same except the name. Remember that. So we will be changing to Nolan branding just to kind of better reflect what the business really has become. So a long time ago, 17 years ago in 2000, I was having a thriving marketing and communication career. I loved my job. I loved everything about it. I just loved the process of marketing and branding. And so I had decided to do a little bit of graphic design work on the side, hence the name Ladybug Design. At the time I had a red Volkswagen Beetle, so it kind of made sense, and I imagined myself putting Ladybug Design stickers on the car. And my sister may actually be watching this, so she'll think this is funny. She lived with me at the time. She was a teenager, and I was her legal guardian for a couple of years while she experimented living in the United States. And she had this polo shirt that she adored from Abercrombie & Fitch that had a little ladybug right there on the side. And I saw it one night when I was trying to figure out what my business name should be as a graphic designer. And I saw this cute little ladybug, and I know that she really loved that shirt. So I, in a whim, really named my business Ladybug Design. It all seemed to fit as I had this red Volkswagen Beetle at the time. I designed the little ladybug, not really stealing Abercrombie & Fitch's logo. No, it did look a little bit different, and named it Ladybug Design. Well, a couple of years later, I was still working in the graphic design field freelance. I had a full-time career as a marketing director and lost my job. I was pregnant at the time. It was probably one of the most devastating days of my life. I remember standing with my box from my office outside of the business that just fired me and looking at my red Beetle and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? That was really, try not to get emotional, sorry. That was really the day that changed my life. So I took my box, and started doing more freelance work, and thought, what am I going to do? I was 5 months pregnant, really didn't have anything that I knew that I could do except marketing and communication, and was hired by a startup company, an IT startup. Really a great place to give me an opportunity, given my belly went in the interview room before my face. So it was kind of amusing. I was very large as a pregnant person, and sort of was trying to rebuild my career, not really understanding how by the age of 28, I had been laid off twice and fired once. And the firing was not for anything I did. The firing was because I happened to tell my boss I was pregnant a few weeks earlier. So this was about rebuilding my life at this point. Well, I decided to do a job search, obviously, and package my resume as well as I could, knowing that, you know, like I said, they were going to see my belly walk in the room before they saw my face for these interviews. So I better knock their socks off before I get in the room, because when I get in the room, there's going to be a big baby elephant in the room. And that was, you know, me being very far along. So I packaged my resume, created a personal logo, did everything that I possibly could with a shoestring budget, got 100% response rate on my resumes. That one particular week I started sending them out. That was five resumes, 4 interviews, and one company that called me that was over by the Columbus airport and said the position was filled, but I had to talk to someone who branded themselves that way because I've never seen anything like it. So I had no idea professional resume writers existed at that point, but I have to believe that this journey was somewhat serendipitous, thinking back on those days. So I was all set to go on these 4 interviews, really excited, but my daughter was more excited. So she came early that Sunday evening, the Sunday before my interviews that coming week, and the rest is history. So I ended up, instead of being a corporate marketing and communications director with really what was my dream employer, I just adored whom I worked for before I got fired by them. I ended up having a premature baby, a husband that was a full-time student, and 0 income, and had to figure out how we were going to make this work when my daughter couldn't leave the house, because it was, if any of you out there have had little babies during flu season, they call it RSV season, you don't leave the house. So she didn't actually leave the house after she came back home from the NICU for about 6 months. So I had to figure out what to do. And I think when she was about maybe 2 months old, I started looking at what can I do from home. I was still doing graphic design. I was still working under Ladybug Design, but those jobs required me to go off-site at 2 corporate locations and assist the graphic design teams for like a whole day or a week. And I really couldn't be away from my daughter at that point for that long, given her health. So I answered an ad on Monster to be a resume writer. The qualifications were to have a master's degree, to be able to write, communicate well, obviously to have customer service skills. So I applied and I got hired, and I started writing resumes and converted my closet, barely a walk-in closet in my apartment, my 2-bedroom apartment, into an office. So I worked every time my daughter was napping, and worked late, worked early. My schedule was 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then when she went for her afternoon nap, I worked 12 to 2. And she was a super good sleeper, so she was in bed at 6, and I worked usually about 6 to 10 or 6 to 11. So I was getting a good solid work day in for this big .com resume company. And that's how I learned this craft. I had a fantastic managing editor in California. Her name was Darlene. And she taught me a lot of what I know and taught me to believe in my own marketing and communication skills, and kept reminding me that a lot of things were really common sense in this field and that I could really rely on my instincts. And I did a great job. And I worked from my little closet in my apartment for a good, probably a good year and a half. At that point, I was this big.com, which this big.com still exists. I won't name them. I was their top writer, and I would get projects anytime I wanted, as many as I wanted. I would get all of their problem projects. So if a client had worked with another writer and weren't pleased, Darlene would say, I know who to send you to, and I would get them. And I learned so much. I completed about 1,000 resumes for them, and really learned the craft, became certified during that time. It took me about 500 resumes before I felt comfortable taking the certification test. So did a lot of work for them. My husband and I, he was still a student, decided that maybe we should kind of try venturing Ladybug Design into a little bit of a more personal branding firm. So we took our life savings at that time, this was in 2003, our life savings of $200, and bought a tile ad on our local job board's website. That happened to be the Columbus Dispatch's website. When they saw the tile ad, they contacted me and said, we've had a relationship with a resume writer in the past and it sort of went by the wayside. Would you like to come to our job fairs and present on resume writing and interviewing? And I said, sure, even though I was absolutely petrified as a public speaker. You wouldn't necessarily know it now, but in the olden days, I would speak to a group of people and I would have to wear a turtleneck because I would be so red and blotchy because I was petrified. So I overcame my fears, went to a job fair in early 2014. That was when job fairs were huge. There were hundreds of people at job fairs. That was the way to get a job back then. And I spoke to this group on resume writing, and it went really well. And the Dispatch, the Columbus Dispatch, had quarterly job fairs. And they invited me back in the summer, and that went really great. And they invited me back in the fall, and that went really great. And meanwhile, I'm still just writing for this big.com company and doing these presentations. Well, after that fall presentation, and these were all-day events, multiple presentations in a day, I came home and I said to my husband, oh my goodness, I feel like Dear Abby, all I do is answer the same questions over and over again. Can't I just write the answer down? And so I pitched the idea of a column to the Columbus Dispatch called Dear Sam, not super creative, but pitched it to them, hey, can I help your readers? Can I answer questions and give them information, and it can help the masses? And I guess that was the lucky point of my journey, in that it was the right time, right place, a great partner to have, and they were reorganizing the employment classified section and gave me half of the front page of the employment classified section for my column. And they said not only will we run it, but it will be a weekly feature, and it will be on the front page every single week where you can answer questions. And it was, it was amazing. So that column launched December 4th of 2004, and somewhat the rest is history. So I started writing the weekly column, had this fantastic opportunity to reach the masses. Of course, with that, people became interested in what I could do to help them. So eventually, by September of 2005, I had the guts. I'm not a big risk taker, so this was big for me, but I had the guts to go it alone. And thank the big.com for all the investment and time they'd given me, and went out on my own. And I've been on my own as Ladybug Design ever since. In case you wonder, my daughter is fine. She's a perfectly healthy, soon to be 16-year-old. So she's doing wonderfully. And that's the journey. That's how the business became the business. So hopefully that was interesting, and you get to learn a little bit more behind, why one entrepreneurs start something, sometimes it's out of necessity, which it kind of was in my case. I do come from a family of people that don't particularly love working for other people. So whether it's business owners or freelancers, I'm not sure I know anyone in my family that works for anybody else, at least not anyone in my close family. Well, my husband has an employer, but he's a pilot, so he runs his own little operation because he's just in the cockpit all the time. But it was in my blood, I think, to work for myself. I am so accountable to myself that it just is a really good place for me to be, to spend my work time. And I still get to do what I love to do, which is marketing and communications. I'm just doing it for people now instead of products. So that's how Ladybug Design came to be. Hopefully none of you fell asleep during that, but a lot of people tend to find that interesting. So we have some other fun questions in the fishbowl, so I'm going to pull some out and answer a few as we have a few more minutes here. So this one says, what's the craziest resume you've ever written? There have been a few. Once I wrote a resume for a stuntman in Paris. That was super fun. The only stuntman resume I've written in my entire career. I wrote a resume for someone who won the Showcase Showdown on The Price is Right. And so at the end of his resume, we have a section that actually says fun fact, and it has a picture of my client jumping and kicking his heels together with Drew Carey. So that was super cool. I've written a resume for an opera singer. Very, very interesting. Those are probably what I classify the craziest. Okay. Oh, after losing your job, how did you overcome the disappointment and move on? Because I had to. So I don't know that I have any tips on that other than sometimes you just gotta put your boots back on and get back out there. So, life sort of maneuvered around, and my husband says to me that the lesson of my daughter coming early was my lesson that not everything could be planned. So, it was disappointment, and it was disappointment for a while, but in the end, like I said, it's really the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It gave me the push I needed. So I guess out of necessity is the short answer. Have you ever written a resume for someone famous? Well, not super famous, but I have written a resume for a very, very close relative of a former Secretary of State. I don't know if that counts, but I thought that was pretty cool. What's your biggest client success story? Oh gosh. Well, the proper answer would be there are so many. Just kidding, but there are a lot. Well, I helped a woman, not this one's kind of top of mind. She had been home with her children for 14 years, and she had one target job. She really, really wanted to get into Cardinal Health in a analytical role, and she was super targeted, which if you listen to any of my other episodes is really the message here. We need to be as targeted as possible. And she got the interview, the first job she applied for at Cardinal, and got the job. And I've since written her updates. So that warmed my heart. I felt like I did something really great for someone who put their own career on hold to do something that I think is so amazing, which is, she dedicated her life to her children. So that was fun. My husband's a pretty good success story. He stayed home with our second child for 4 years. Our second child was born with some special needs, who we've had some tough journeys with our children, but they're both phenomenal. So nobody feels sorry for them. They're both amazing, perfectly healthy kids now. But my husband got back into his career as a pilot, and I have to say that the resume that he was sporting out there was pretty darn good. And when he went to a recent interview with a major airline, the recruiter actually told him that it was the best resume they'd ever seen. So a close to home success story. So we'll do one more question. of all your clients, who was the longest distance away? I don't know the math, but I've had several clients in Japan, and I just had a client in Australia. He's actually at a university in Australia, so not sure which one is further away, but definitely on the other side of the earth. Hawaii too, just had a return client in Hawaii who left her career in Chicago to live on Maui, which I think is phenomenal. So that's probably the furthest away, between those three. So I hope that this episode gave you a little bit more insight into why I do what I do, and maybe it gives you some anecdotal evidence as to why I care about what I do, and why everyone in my team is really innately passionate about what we do, because I hope that that resonates from why I started the business and why I'm doing it after 15 years, okay? So I hope you've enjoyed this unique episode. I'll get back to your personal branding and career development questions next Wednesday. Remember, one day early at 12:15, and hope to see you there, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.